Okay, so I'm going to be doing my coolant practical on my 1990s Mustang 5.0. First, we're going to talk about how the coolant flows and the direction it flows in. So we got a radiator here, aluminum radiator. It has a rad cap, pressurized rad cap and everything. So usually we'll pour the coolant through here if there isn't any coolant in the whole system. So pour the coolant through the radiator cap, and then I'll go through the lower radiator hose and into the water pump. The water pump is located right here. The water pump then pushes all the coolant through the block and into the engine, where it goes through all the little water jackets and goes through all the major components on the engine to cool them down. And once the coolant reaches a certain temperature, it'll come back through the thermostat, which is right here, and the thermostat will open, allowing the warm coolant to come through the upper radiator hose and back into the radiator, and we'll do that so again and again to keep all the coolant coolant cool, so it doesn't overheat. So talking about radiators, we got a radiator here. A lot of radiators use different types of radiators. And a lot of different types of radiators have different types of flows, which are the coolant flows. There's usually a cross flow, which flows from one end to another, or a down flow, which goes from the top to bottom. I believe all the newer vehicles use a cross flow system because it allows the fan to cool down better, because it uses a bigger surface area to cool down. You see these two hoses here from the water pump, they go through the heater core. The hoses end up here, but in between we have these lines here that both go to the the heater core. And we have a bleeder screw here, which we use to bleed out all the air if there's any air in the system or any air gets into the system. We got our coolant temperature sensor right here, which lets us know what the engine is, what the temperature of the engine is, if it's overheating or if it's cold or anything like that. And these hoses run straight to the heater core itself. The heater core is usually located behind this dash and near the glove box, but different vehicles have different places where the heater core is placed. But to get to this heater core, I believe you have to take apart the dash to get to the heater core. This radiator works by passing coolant through the metal fins. These metal fins keep the coolant cool when it's getting circulated through the whole cooling system. So we're coming back to the thermostat. If the thermostat was completely shut or seized, there would be a big overheating issue, because the thermostat is not letting all the warm coolant that's in there to flow through the apparatus and through the radiator to cool down. So it would be a big overheating issue there. If the thermostat was slightly open, there still would be a little overheating issue there because it's not opening fully, so it's restricting some of the flow. And if the thermostat was completely open, there won't be any heat, there won't be any heat going through the heater core or into the cabin. And the inside during the winter times it'll be really cold in there. There won't be any heat circulation. Leak points on this car. You got the water pump here, which tends to leak these gaskets. But the thing about the water pump on this car is connected to the timing cover itself. So once you take these bolts off, they're connected all the way through, so you got to change the water pump gaskets and the timing cover gaskets together. And that, I did one of those and it's a nightmare. I don't want to do them again. We got the thermostat here. So in the thermostat, there's a gasket that usually goes here. That usually tends to go after a certain amount of time, or if there's too much pressure in the system, it will tend to leak. You got the rod here. The rod can crack, or the fins can get messed up. They can crack and there can be coolant coming through here, or these seams where it's welded, it start leaking here over a period of time. You got the coolant reservoir that can get cracked and coolant can leak from there. And internally there could be a head gasket problem if the block gets cracked, or if anything out, any of the other components inside get cracked, and then there'll be the coolant will be leaking inside into the pistons. That's another leak over there. So for this fan that I used to have a mechanical fan that was connected to the serpentine belt and to the water pump, but I got rid of that and put a mechanical fan on here because it cools down the engine way better, and the coolant itself. So the fan itself, I have it grounded there, and I also have it connected to the starter solenoid and the ignition solenoid. I believe so it works as a bypass because I don't have a relay, so I bypass everything and I can connect to the ground and add power to one of those and make the fan spin, and you can bypass it through that. So Volkswagen water pumps, I had a customer come in, he said that his vehicle was overheating. The bottom of the rad hose had a little plastic piece inside it. Like I don't know why they do that. They have little plastic pieces inside the radiator hoses, and that plastic cracked and went into the plastic water pump itself, and both plastic pieces, once it was spinning, it seized that water pump. And another reason one of those water pumps go bad is because the bearings that they have when it spins, the bearings go bad and the water pump goes downhill from there. So that's about it. I'm pretty sure I covered all the things about the cooling system. I'm just trying to remember if I missed anything or not. The cooling system also helps cool down the conductive heat that's all around the engine, because once heat starts getting warm, it goes from one place to another, and it's usually like that with a lot of cast iron blocks. They'll get really hot and then the heat will expand and they'll go from one spot to another, and then the coolant helps that and it cools down the conductive heat. So pretty sure I covered everything. That's it. We're out. Mustang life.